Greetings all, and welcome back to Tales of Woe. Finally, after 7 months, I am your humble storyteller, Tim, and today we are still going to continue on with the tale of the beginning. At this point here, we've only got maybe 2 or 3 more episodes of this to go, which will finalize that tale, and then we'll be getting on to something a little bit different. But in the last part of the story, the group managed to survive physically, but for the most part, but not necessarily mentally in the case of Nuru, with escaping from the Monastery of the Distressed Body with her brother being taken over by Moloch and her having to kill him. But after escaping, the group managed to get back to the wagon of MacGuffin. They fixed it all up, and using the world engine and Katskys, had worked out that the last part, well, not worked out, Katskys just told them, the last component that they required, the Staff of Light, was actually at his laboratory, which was at underneath an observatory on an island. And so using the world engine, they teleport their way there, and this is where the next session began. And this was really where I decided to really delve into some of the consequences of what they were dealing with. More so than what they already knew, because they knew that the Tarrasque had gotten free and was roaming free, and they knew they had broken the dimensions. But what they didn't know was that with Selena. Now, she'd been getting powers from a new patron that no one knew who it was, because her patron had been cut off when the dimensions broken, but she was still getting powers from some other place. And this was where it came to everyone's knowledge where this power was coming from. And this is where I blended in 2 stories into one, primarily just the maps, but also the story based of one, that being the Lost Laboratory of Qualish and the Call of Atropus. Now, the Call of Atropus was coming into it because the storyline of that evolves around a group of people going to an observatory that's been completely abandoned, where eldritch horrors lie. And you follow through this place, you find out that there's this evil being that's coming towards the planet that could essentially consume all on the planet. And this is where Selena finds out that's what her patron is. Her patron is actually Atropus, the undead being that is the eater of worlds, and Atropus is coming to eat their world. And so her powers keep growing the more that Atropus gets closer, but also the more she uses her powers, the brighter the beacon shines to bring Atropus towards the planet. But of course they don't know this at this point. That's just what's been going on. So they get to this place. Nuru's still catatonic, asleep in her room in the wagon. And they find that they can't get into the main section of the observatory because it's surrounded by a weird shimmering field, which wasn't there before. Katskys has no idea what it's all about. But they go in the rear entrance through his laboratory. He points out, so cool, there's the Staff of Light. If you want to take it, we can just go. We're all good. Here, there's the suit of power armor. There's the folding boat. There's, literally just giving them all the stuff from the endgame section of the Lost Laboratory of Qualish, because at this point, they were dealing with so much crap that was going on. I felt they just needed a really good treasure hoard. So I just said, yeah, have it all. It's all yours. So just take whatever it is that you like. So they gathered up the power armor. Oh, the other item that they picked up, this was a custom item that I'd invented, which was the Tarrasque hide armor, because Katskys had been one of the ones that initially fought and defeated the Tarrasque the first time and imprisoned it under Evanwood. He had a small section of the Tarrasque's hide which he'd used his magic to form into armor. Unfortunately, the armor was such that if you didn't attune to it before putting it on, it actually ate you. It actually had the hunger of the Tarrasque built into it. So if you put the armor on and you weren't attuned to it, it would just the armor would just absorb you into it. So you had to attune to it first. He said he went through quite a few assistants before he worked out that that was the case. The other aspect of it that it was, though, is that once you attuned to it and put it on, it fused and became part of your skin, which means you could never take it off. However, the benefits of it essentially turn you into a miniature Tarrasque in that you have the reflective carapace, you have the immunity to directed energy attacks, you're basically immune to all non-magical damage, so it's a pretty hefty piece of equipment. So it's just a piece of hide armor that just gives you a massive amount of benefits. It's almost like a slightly better version of the armor of invulnerability with, I think it's like the mantle of reflection or something like that. But regardless, I'll put yeah, here it is. You guys can see it there. So so they get all of this equipment and they're all ready to go, but Selena, being the curious one and wanting to know all about knowledge, wants to find out what's been going on with this observatory. And the game is on. What they find in the observatory is a whole bunch of mutated eldritch horrors. Someone has been using the observatory in Katskys' absence and has stumbled on to Atropus, and observing Atropus moving closer to the planet has driven this person completely insane. It's like staring into the eyes of Cthulhu, because this thing, being what literally creates death, it is death incarnate, has just made her completely insane. But one other aspect that had happened, the reason that she came to this observatory in the first place, one, because it's like the only one left on the planet after the cataclysm, but also she discovered a small fragment of Atropus that had impacted into the atmosphere and had brought like the stone was talking to her and telling her that, you know, she needs to complete this ceremony, needs to gaze upon Atropus and bring it through. So if the group hadn't of gotten there and hadn't intervened, what was going to happen was that the aspect of Atropus was going to be summoned through a portal, and this was going to begin roaming around the Earth and basically preparing for Atropus is coming to consume the planet, sort of like Galactus and the Silver Surfer, basically. But because they managed to stop the ceremony, they killed the person and didn't go insane in the process, that didn't happen. So the end game that I'd planned was still on. But what did happen was that they decided to take the asteroid. Now, this was something I'd sort of planned for, but wasn't really sure about. But what ended up happening was they took it back to the Equinox. They finally got back there. They had all of the elements that they required in order to defeat the Tarrasque. They had the shield, they had the wagon, they had the Staff of Light, and they had all the armor that they needed. They had the Tarrasque hide armor. They had basically everything that they had at their disposal. They were ready for the end game. But being the curious one that Selena was, she decided that she wanted to find out more about this rock. And when they found the rock, I should actually explain this too. When they found the rock, it was in a room, and there was this black ooze everywhere that was seeping out of the stone, which could be very easily repelled with fire. So you had burning hands or whatever, it was able to burn it all back, and it just retracted back inside to the rock. But if you touched it and you failed a Constitution saving throw, it was 1 point of exhaustion, because this is literally the essence of Atropus. It's just draining the life out of you. So they sealed up the stone in in a box that they, like in a chest. They sealed it all up and they took it back to the Equinox, which still had its still functioning laboratory, and they pack it all away and prepare to do all the scientific tests. And of course, once they start working on it, the ooze starts seeping out of this thing, and they've got it in a containment chamber. It's all going on. This is very much like the Blob, basically. They've got this blob in a black case, and it's smashing on the sides of it. And it's contained. All is well. But Nuru and I think it was actually Geeve at this point too, being the trigger happy sorts that they were, felt, well, this is getting out of hand. It's going to escape because it was hitting on the glass and the glass was beginning to break. And so they crafted a series of explosives and literally blew the entire lab apart, destroying the containment section, and releasing the ooze out into the aspect of the ship. And the reason the ooze was trying to get out was because it was looking for a new host, because it knew that Selena was there. She was one of the followers, albeit unknowingly, of Atropus, and Atropus had a gift for her, basically to make her not the avatar, what's the word I'm looking for? The Herald. Make her the Herald of Atropus. And so this ooze slides in through the ventilation shaft, finds her, and sticks to her and surrounds her. And she's cocooned in this black slime. And Wallflower's there. She's whacking on this thing, trying to get her out of it. And every time they hit the slime, it just does damage to her. And then I make her do a check for every single one of her stats in sequence. Now, she has to pass a wisdom save, then she has to do charisma, then strength, then constitution, then dexterity, and then back to wisdom and intelligence. So basically, once she's gone through all of the stats, every time she fails at one of these stats, like she's got to beat, I think, a 20 with each of the rolls, depending on what her stats were. But every time she would fail a stat point, she would take a point of exhaustion. And the idea was that she had to pass all 6 checks before she failed all 6 checks. So it was either going to kill her or it was going to change her. And the way that I ran this, like the idea in my head was very much like the Chrysalis moment with Kerrigan from the first StarCraft game. And once she managed to pass all of the checks, the cocoon solidified and it exploded out, and she had become the new Herald of Atropus. But because she had come out of it with more, I think she only failed 1 check, if I remember correctly. And the primarily one that she needed to save was her wisdom and her charisma ones. Because those remained at a certain point, she still had her free will, and she wasn't completely dominated by Atropus. So she still had the power that Atropus wanted her to have, but he had not taken control of her. And so now it came down to the point that she knew what this being was. She knew what it was going to do. It was now up to her to decide whether she would allow this being to consume all life on Torel, but give her ultimate power, or whether she would betray her new patron, because she now knows who it is, and save the world and potentially lose all the power that she had. So that was where the story was going. And I think I'll leave it there for now, because at this point, this was when the group all decided that they needed to deal with a certain wizard who had been causing them a whole lot of grief. And they knew where he was. They had his location, and they were getting ready to take the battle to Rick Tavio in his flying fortress. And when I say the flying fortress, I mean his space fortress in the asteroid belt of Saloon. So in the next session, that is where we will be taking the Tales of Woe. So come back to find out how the group deal with Rictavio. Until then.